that's what those are.
So they're, but I'll be open to go and see what you said and stuff.
Yeah, if you can't go on the one night, you can go on.
If you work, you know, with those students, so it's okay.
And the real answer is we didn't already know.
Yeah, because those, she's the same person who did our.
Okay. All right. Good evening. Since 5:30 p.m., the Board of Education has been in closed session to review the following: the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the district, or legal counsel for the district. Please have a motion to come out of closed session. Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are in open session. Welcome to the August 1st, 2016 meeting for the Board of Education. Our mission is to educate students to be self-directed learners, complex workers, collaborative workers, complex thinkers, quality producers, and community contributors. Roll call, please, Ms. Bell.
Board members present: Donna Wanke, Jackie Romberg, Mike Yench, Terry Fielden, Charles Cush, Kristen Fitzgerald, and Susan Crotty.
Could you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you very much. First item, good news.
Good news. Just wanted to bring the board's attention and the community's attention to a series of parent education nights we have scheduled early this fall to support our digital learning initiative. But Dr. Devorah Heitner will be leading parent information nights at each of our 5 junior high schools. The first one is actually next week on August 11th at Washington, and then other nights, August 22nd at Jefferson, August 25th at Lincoln, September 20th at Kennedy, and September 29th at Madison Junior High School. Again, this is really going to focus on the topic of raising digital natives and some support for parents on good digital citizens. Again, these are open to our community, so we encourage those who are interested to attend. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe I'm correct, that if you're not available on the night of your student's junior high, you can go to any of them. And thus, if you're a community member interested in this topic as well, you'd be free to attend. You'll recall that Dr. Heitner also did a Focus 203 in District 203 last year. So I'm excited for this event.
Very good, thank you. Okay, we're up to public comment. I don't have any cards for public comment, but if there's any member of the audience who'd like to speak before the board, it's 3 minutes for an individual and 5 minutes for a group. Anybody wishing to speak before the board? Okay, thank you. On to the action by consent. One item on the action by consent tonight, and that's adoption of the personnel report.
I don't think the name has been added yet, correct? So we
Working
should.
on it right now.
Oh, so, okay.
It's in there.
So
Just have
I
to refresh.
It's
Move-
there now.
okay. So I just looked and it wasn't. So okay, but I move to approve item number 6.01, the adoption of the personnel report as presented.
Second?
You have a motion and a second to approve the personnel report as presented. Roll call, please, Ms. Bell.
Yench,
Aye.
Cush,
Yeah, aye.
Fitzgerald,
Aye.
Wanke,
Yes.
Fielden,
Yes,
Romberg. Yes. Crotty.
Yes.
motion carries.
As part of the consent agenda this evening, the Board of Education approved the naming of an interim principal at Mill Street Elementary School for the 16-17 school year. Pleased to welcome back to the district Robin Ripple, who most recently served as the principal at Riverwoods Elementary School. Robin has agreed to come back and support us in this year of transition in that vacancy, so it'll be nice to have somebody familiar with District 203 and the principal's work here in our school district. So please join me in welcoming Robin, and Mr. Freund led a couple of focus groups with staff and parents, and I believe Robin's experience in our district and experience as a principal is really going to be a welcome for them as we go through a year of transition here and go through a process to select a principal for the 17-18 school year.
And as you probably know, I know Chuck does, that she was a Northside principal for a long time, too. So that should help the...
At
should-
BB.
Yes, you're old.
Excellent. On to communications. First up is the student ambassador reports. They're not here yet because the school hasn't started, but we'll look forward to hearing from them as we wind on. Superintendent staff school reports.
I'll invite Melissa Hampton to come forward to, wouldn't be fair to ask her to give a report to the Board of Education 5 seconds after she was brought into the district. But our Director of Professional Learning, Melissa Hampton, is prepared to discuss with the board exciting digital learning initiative, professional learning we have coming up. You'll recall that the Board of Education approved a contract with EdTech, the EdTech team, on March 21st to support professional learning needs as we implement the digital learning initiative here in District 203. We have a 2-day event summit coming up this week. I thought it would be good for Melissa to come before the board on behalf of a whole team of people who've been working to plan this to share with you some of the exciting highlights of the 2-day summit. So, Melissa?
All right, great. Thanks, Dan. It's exciting to be here with you tonight. One of my favorite things is to share professional learning news with you all. And we have some really great news to share with you tonight. We have a new adventure in professional learning with our Google Summit. It's brand new to our district. As Dan mentioned, you know that we signed a new contract this year with a new consulting team, EdTech team, to support our professional learning and digital learning initiative this year. If you refer to your board docs, you have a kind of a one-page summary overview outline. I'll take you through and highlight some of those pieces for you. This is a pretty large event that we're going to host. We have about 443 participants that are going to be coming, and most of them are District 203 staff. Not all of them are. So we do have people coming in, around 100 people from outside of the district that will be attending this professional learning, so that's very exciting. It was a pretty big team that helped to put this together along with EdTech. Jill Holopchek, of course, who you have been working with on digital learning, Joe Jaraseski and his whole team to help get everything support from the IT end. And then really just a special thanks to all of the Naperville Central buildings and ground team. It's pretty big to get everything set up, also with trying to get everything set up for the beginning of the school year. So a couple of highlights just to share with you. We have 13 of our own presenters who will be presenting alongside the National EdTech team. We have 9 of our own students who are going to be supporting their event. They're going to come and help guide people into directions and help support and get everyone into their agendas. Everything, because it's a Google Summit, everything's going to be digital. So when you come in, and even ahead of time, you can access the agenda, and then everything that you need to access is through links, which is kind of exciting. So our AT staff will be there to help. The students will be there, our own presenters. And so a couple of just session examples that I'll share with you that are on the page, and then you can go in and click on any of the sessions that you want to if you go into the Northeastern Summit information. One of the sessions, Stories with Substance, Storytelling in the 21st Century, that is actually one of our own Naperville 203 presenters, very connected to storytelling in the now. So when you go in and you're trying to tell your story and connect it to the learning outcomes that we have, the tools that we have to access right now make it much more dynamic, innovative, offers a lot of student choice. There are going to be just your tool sessions. So the one session on everything you ever wanted to know about Google Forms. So if you're trying to figure out the different kind of tech and tools, you can go to sessions that will teach you how to access everything, what to do with them, and how to use them effectively with your students. And then there are also sessions on professional learning. So if you want to expand your professional learning in a digital way, they will show you how to do that. At the end of the day, they have demo slams. Demo slams are a lot of fun. They're very high-paced, fast, and it's a contest between the presenters. So they have 3 minutes to show the audience their favorite tool, and then the audience votes on their favorite. So it's kind of fun and exciting to see a different way to share tools connected to student learning. We have different keynotes. One of the keynotes on the very first day has to do with compassion and connecting to students. So as we have students that are going to be on technology, more so than they have in the past, making sure that teachers are very aware to connect with students on a personal level. So it should be really exciting. It's going to be a great 2 days. Fast-paced, a lot of information, and then again, everything housed for them electronically so that they can go back to anything that they want to. A couple of just additional professional learning updates for you to keep you informed. Junior high will be going live very quickly. All of the junior high staff engaged in professional learning on May 26th. We have a lot of teacher presenters. It was a great day. We also had 2 separate one-day professional learning in the summer. Great feedback on those. We had some ed tech consultants that were keynotes for that, and then our teacher presenters. And then we also have online GAFI training that teachers are going through, self-paced, lots of information. They can go through it however they want to and at whatever pace they want to. And then we have a lot of our junior high teachers, in addition to our elementary and high school, that are registered for the summit as well. All of our digital learning leaders have been in full learning all summer, continuing to work towards their GAFI Google certifications, level 1 and 2, so that they are ready to support their team members in the fall. That's my quick overview. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Any questions from Kristen?
Thank you for showing us how to get to the link that shows all the sessions. My only question would be, as an attendee, would be, wow, how do I choose? Because
Yes.
it's amazing. All of the various levels, it's differentiated in terms of
It
your
is.
levels. It's great. I am excited to see it.
Yeah, you can choose a strand to follow, you can choose a level to follow, you can follow our own staff, you can follow the ed tech staff.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good.
Maybe this is a question for Dan. Are you going to do your overview with the new teacher orientation as well? Because I think that, no?
It's an overview
Of the new,
Well, you usually speak at the new teacher
Yeah.
breakfast.
am I going to? Is
Yeah.
that? Yes.
And kind of tell them, I just think it's just to hear everybody in that room, there's that sigh of relief when you say, all the stuff that they've learned, or they haven't started school yet, but the new teachers, it's really fun.
They've already, yeah.
I love watching the reactions.
Yeah, it is. And Melissa's already organized 2 days of professional learning for them. So we've had them a couple of days already. And then next week, they're back at it. And I should have reminded everybody with good news, because in just over 2 weeks, we're back in school.
Back at it,
And
yeah.
our staff our teachers are back in the schools 2 weeks from today. So.
Thank you.
Okay. On to President's report. No report tonight. Board of Education reports. Anybody? Very good. Charles, nothing? No words on how it's been going for you so far?
I was going to give an update. I was going to move that to next one, but I can give an overview tonight. Well, as part of my onboarding to the board, I've had the opportunity to visit now with 20 of our 22 building leaders, and I just have to say that from having experience of kids in the district and seeing firsthand how those principals were very passionate about education and making sure that every child in the district has what they need. I'm happy to now report that it's universal. It's systemic. It's everywhere. And for parents who haven't had the opportunities to obviously everyone has their own experience with their own child in their own school. But if you really see how much collaboration is done between principals, and I think it's just a testament to a lot of the work that's been done in selecting the right people to be leading our school buildings, the passion, the energy they have for the students, the creativity they bring to bringing different ideas and different solutions, the vast diversity of the types of communities that they're interacting with, the challenges that they're facing, and the optimism that each and every one of them brings to meeting those challenges and rising to the occasion. It's extremely overwhelming, and it's very exciting. And so I just thought that I would share that briefly with everyone tonight, and to thank Chuck and Nancy for allowing me to spend some time with your folks, and to let you know that they're doing a great job, and they all were very welcoming to me, but just the energy and the passion that they bring is fantastic. And that's it.
So you regret your decision? Is that what you said?
Please, more now than ever. No, it's
Well, that's great.
fantastic.
Well, I'm glad, and thanks for sharing that, Charles. It's good to know that you're up to speed and that you're excited about it as well, too. Okay, on to discussion without action. First item is 2017 health insurance changes.
Annually, a committee of district employees meet together to review health insurance benefits and brings forward recommendations to the Board of Education for annual changes in plans or recommendations for changes in plan. And this year, a recommendation is being brought to you for your consideration and a request for action at the second meeting in August. And our Chief Human Resources Officer, Carol Hetman, will walk you through the recommended changes for the coming school year.
Good evening. I have just a few comments with regard to our process, and then we'll go a little bit into some of the changes. The Health Insurance Committee of the district met in April 2016 to discuss both developing a wellness strategy and also developing a healthcare cost containment strategy. The healthcare cost containment strategy discussion took priority as we listened to the Board of Education directives on cost containment. We discussed ideas around how cost containment could be achieved and what would drive our strategy. The first was that what was important to us was to improve member health and well-being. The second was effective vendor management, meaning to maximize benefits through most cost-effective vendors. And third was to examine cost-shifting strategies. And by that, it means new technology and services, plan design, and employee contribution strategies. We reviewed monthly claims for 2016. We looked at projections for the costs for 2017. We reviewed usage, both inpatient, outpatient. We looked at ER costs and utilization, and we looked at our drug costs. What we know is that wellness and well-being is important to cost containment because if we can impact behavior, it will lower costs for all of us. Our committee met again on May 17th, where we presented and reviewed 16 cost-saving options. We asked everyone around the table to vote on these options. So we all went away, and we came back the following week on May 26th to review the results of the top-ranking plan savings options. So what you see here in board docs are the results of our recommendations this evening include plan design changes, which we estimate to be a savings of about $2.1 million. In particular, when we look at medical, we plan to remove the silver plan that we have, but add a narrow network for both the platinum PPO and the gold high deductible plan. We estimate that the savings for this will be about $793,000. We also will reduce the existing high deductible premium rates by 5% and front load the district portion of the HSA contribution. And by doing this, we believe that we'll be able to increase participation by an estimated 7.5% in the high deductible plan. Assuming all of that happens, there should be an estimated savings of about $554,000. The whole idea is to encourage participation in that high deductible, that gold high deductible plan. And also for medical, we would add an ER copay, and that would be an estimated savings of about $45,000. Dental claims have been flat since 2012. Therefore, we would remove the trend that we had been budgeting of 7%, estimated at about $117,000. And finally, RX. We plan to negotiate with Blue Cross regarding Prime RX renewal rates. We estimate a savings of about $224,000. We intend to implement a new pharmacy network, which excludes CVS and Target, for an estimated savings of about $211,000. We would implement mandatory use of Prime RX for specialty drugs, another savings of about $100,000, and we would change brand RX copays from $20 or $40 to $30 and $50 for an estimated cost savings of about $103,000. What we know is that with all of these plan design changes, communication around these changes will be important. Although we have not finalized our communication plan yet, we will most likely take what we did during last year's open enrollment, and we'll build upon that. We'll have, just for an example, we will have benefit informational meetings. We had 2 last year, 1 at each high school. We anticipate we'll have a minimum of 3 meetings, a minimum. We'll also have 1-to-1 meetings that'll be set up where Blue Cross will actually come on site to provide enrollment assistance. Blue Cross would actually be here from about 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Specifically for our bus drivers, we would actually have Blue Cross and our staff go over to the bus barn. We'll have online videos for employees who cannot attend the meetings. We'll have posters, we'll have mailings going to their homes. And of course, we will work with our Director of Communications to ensure that we have a solid communication plan. In summary, the Health Insurance Committee takes their responsibility very seriously. We listen to the directives, and we are recommending the adoption of 2 new insurance plans, the narrow network plans, the elimination of the silver plan, and plan design changes, which we estimate will result in a savings of about $2.1 million. Be happy to answer whatever questions you have.
Thank you, Carol. Any questions from the board on plan changes?
Carol, I think it's just commendable what this committee's done, the fact that there's no rate increase. But the point I wanted to make to the community or people that are listening is that access to physicians and hospitals is very robust in both of these plans. You were able to explain hospitals, suburban hospitals, university teaching hospitals are all included. So you want to make sure that the rates aren't going up, but you're still getting premium coverage. So thank you.
Yes, and I know that the board was very concerned about that. Yes.
Thank you.
Susan actually had her.
Could you go over the committee a little bit more?
Sure. The committee is comprised of representation from all 4 of our unions. So sometimes we have at least 1, sometimes 2 members from each union present. Our UNISERV director is present, and we have staff from both business office and human resources.
So it's a collaborative effort.
It is.
Thank you.
Kristen.
Thank you so much for your explanation of the process, and I also commend you on that. It is, I think the makeup of the committee and the process the committee goes through helps to get the buy-in for all those parties and makes them supportive of the changes, which is fantastic. I'm so glad we were able to save $2.1 million. Thank you also for your communication about the communications plan. The one area where I am, the most hoping that it does go through and it will depend on the communications is that switch to the HSA plan, the gold, I think, is it called the gold? Yeah, the gold high deductible plan, because our savings do depend on that 7.5% switch, which is pretty big. But I think that the highlighting of your communications plan, the in-person people that are able to talk about the real benefits that you're adding, that all of those things will really help to ensure that we are able to meet that savings goal based on the increase in the participation.
You're absolutely correct in that one-on-one communication. We've experienced it a little bit last open enrollment. And if we are able to reach our staff on a one-to-one basis and explain what their options are, they of course make the decision, but it's that one-on-one contact that I think will make the difference.
Well, and particularly because the high deductible isn't your traditional makeup. I mean, it's not what people are used to necessarily. And so I think in that particular case, it is even more important to explain the benefits. And for example, the rollover, all those different kinds of things that are different than your average type of plan. So I think the more that is expressed, the more likely we are to see more people sign up for that.
Yeah, quite, Mike?
Yeah, to piggyback on that, because I was going to bring up the same thing. I mean, I appreciate the term communication, but it really has to be an education plan. Having worked on this in a different job on these types of plans, I mean, we have a very, very competitive and generous HDHP. I find so many people that I've worked with just don't understand, especially the tax benefits of the HSA compared to the flex spending accounts. And when I look at these numbers and the seating we're doing and front-loading the seating, we've taken all the risk out of going to a high deductible plan, because we're basically covering the out-of-pocket maximums. And basically, they have a chance to save money, and they have almost, if they use the HSA properly, they're actually going to guaranteed to save money. So it's a big education piece, but as Kristen said, it's different. Everybody's used to having, I got my little deductible, and then I get my 80%, and then got that. It's a different model, but if you run the numbers and remind me, the website to our current providers provide a calculator where you can compare different medical costs and see what the personal costs are. Is that included in our current providers? For the software providers for the selection?
Yeah, actually, it's included in Business Solver, which is our open enrollment software. Allows people to see different scenarios.
And does it take into account tax savings for an HSA?
No, that's where we have the one-on-one counseling. They have to understand their own marginal tax bracket and all of that, but that's a critical component of it.
I mean, when you're saving 30% of $7,000 that you can use the rest of your life without any taxes on it, no taxes going in, no taxes coming out, there's nothing like it as far as a savings vehicle. So, and people need to understand that. But anyway, great job with the committee. I echo everybody else's comments on that.
Any questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much. Item 8.02, review of policy 2.104, 2.110, and 2.160. Jackie?
Thank you, Terry. From time to time, we have one of our roles as board members is policies. And from time to time, we have policies that are changed because of state mandates or government mandates, or the school board officials suggest through press that we change. And the reason I had asked and talked to Terry and Mike about these, I looked at a couple of them to say, what, being driven by a board member, would these make us a better board? Would future boards be better? And I kept coming back to yes. Organizationally, I think these things would help us. So unlike a lot of policies that have proposed wording, because this is not from the administration or from press, but a discussion I would like to have with my colleagues, there's no proposed wording. And if I could, I'd like to start with all of your thoughts on the board attorney one first, 2160, because I feel like the other two are a little more related. Right now, there's nothing wrong with the policy, but if somebody has something they'd like to talk to the attorney about, the way that it's structured is we go through our superintendent or our board president. There might be something, could be too hot to handle. I think something would make us more flexible and more nimble, but I would still want our board president involved, not from a permission standpoint, but from a in-the-loop standpoint. So I would like us to perhaps come up with some words that would say, if a board member has a need to speak with an attorney, that they would advise, notify the president, something like that. And I open it up to discussion.
May I just, yeah.
Sure.
Since this was brought to board prep, I've spent some time looking at some other district policies.
great.
There's some samples out there.
Great.
Many have the same. I found one that had something that is kind of getting us toward that. That's Barrington 220 allows for president or his or her designee. So that's kind of in the right direction. But I think staff can work with legal counsel on wording, because I think the one concern that I would have, again, looking future boards into
Right.
the future, is, tonight we're going to ask you to act on policy 7160.
Right.
What we want to prevent is 8 phone calls to the council
Totally
on
understand.
7160, one from staff and then 7 board members. So if there's a mechanism in place
Right.
that identifies, wait a minute, I've heard this from 3 board members. Why don't we have the attorney come to the meeting instead,
Right.
so that there's only one thing? So I think that would be what I would ask that we, the board, if you choose to look at rewriting this, we incorporate something in there that has a mechanism in there that kind of contains potential costs.
I'm very supportive of that, and I would like to remind everyone, we as a district have probably the most powerful policy of any district in the state whereby any board member can put something on an agenda. And I would remind us that if we or future boards are not judicious, we can pick up the phone and call someone and ask them a bunch of questions or sit in their office. That's also time spent and staff time spent. So it really is incumbent upon us as a board, and we do this to ourselves. We self-correct and say, okay, well, Donna could say, Jackie, now, does everybody feel that way? And vice versa. And we do this all the time. So I'm totally supportive of that, but just not limiting somebody that has a question or concern or clarification. But I like the idea of a check on a
Check and
check.
balances, yeah.
I'm totally fine with that.
Susan?
I like that as well, because really it's 7 members and they all are this, they're all elected by the community, and it gives them kind of all equal footing. So I think it's a great opportunity, and I would love to see kind of the recommendations that you feel important to bring forward.
And one thing that I also reflected on, this board has been really good about self-policing and trying to ensure that, and it happens from time to time, but one board member doesn't know more or have access to information where others don't. So I think this is a step toward kind of that as well.
Mike? Go ahead, Mike.
I also support this. I think it's a good idea. I don't think any, even when I was president, I never felt that one board member should have certain powers. They sometimes have responsibilities, but certain powers that other people don't. But I also understand, to Dan's point, I think the good check and balance is just wording that says, hey, notify the board president if you have a question for the attorney. Board president may, like you said, already have some information or may at least have that conversation, but it doesn't take away that right to a board member's right to get the information he or she needs to make the correct decision. I remember when I was president, we had a board member, with the same policy, and he had some questions for the attorney, and he would always call me first, and it wasn't even in the policy, but that way there was no secret agendas. And I think that's one of the things in a future board that I would be worried about. This prevents the secret agendas, but still empowers the board members to feel they have the right to get the information they need if they can't get it, as through the board as a whole or through the meetings. So anyway, I support this kind of change too.
It's the other thing that occurred to me. That I'll have to look at language on. We work with multiple firms, and so it'll be, I guess maybe you want a second opinion at times, but we have to make sure that there's something for you to be able to know what council staff has been working
Well, I
with.
think that's why
perhaps.
that phone call
Yep.
to the board president, and then, if it's an IEP type question, then the board president either knows or he goes, hey, ask Dan who the correct attorney is, or ask Dan to do it, or, but by preventing people from going INS direct to the lawyer, by having that first step, that way we take care of a lot of those issues.
Any questions?
Yeah. The only question I would have is kind of looking at it again at the sort of like policies that stand the test of time. I think that it's always important to ensure that our work as board members is doing the work of the board. So what you want to foresee would be individuals, and again, I'm looking down the road at future boards. I wouldn't expect this of any member at this table, but you want to make sure that the issues that are being discussed with the attorney are issues of importance to the whole board, because it can't be their opportunity. Well, the president, but I think it should be in the policy as well. I mean, the issues that we're working at are issues that are issues of importance to the whole board, not personal issues, not, that's the concern I would have, is that. I don't think it actually, even in our policy right now, we don't clarify that. We say the superintendent, the board president are allowed to confer. We don't actually say on issues of importance to the board, or the whole board, or something of the kind. Like, I just would want to make sure that we weren't allowing individual board members to have sort of their own personal types of issues that they would then bring to the attorney, because then we're ending up with what we could have would be, significant legal bills, which are always a concern. So, I mean, that would be my main concern, is that there's some type of wording that expresses that it is, our issues as a board. You know what I mean? Issues of importance to the whole board.
Okay, I mean, are you suggesting that a future board member might call about their real estate taxes or
No, but you-
divorce or something like that?
Of
I mean,
course not.
I
But-
mean, why would a board member call our board attorney about something that wasn't related to the board?
I think she means a personal agenda.
A personal
item.
agenda or a personal issue?
If I could just exemplify that, when you go to IASB training, when they talk about board elections and so forth, one of the things they directly comment on is that the poorest board members are those who run on an agenda-driven topic, because then they find out that there's too much going on in the Board of Education, and their personal agenda can't get resolved, and they become frustrated. So I agree with you. The question is, the board also has to self-police itself, and when these issues come up and so forth, if there's 7 new members in 4 or 5 years, they're going to have to wrestle with that issue and also put something in place to prevent that. So,
And,
who's first? I didn't see because it's to my left.
go ahead.
Okay.
I've already spoken. Deacon.
But-
Oh, I think that's right. I just was coming up with an example of things that were, education issues, but not necessarily issues that the whole board has endorsed. And what we want to prevent is an individual member going forward and racking up legal bills. And that's
staff
why
time, huh?
most boards do not allow all members
Right.
to call. They
Well-
don't. They have a function that ensures that it is a matter of importance to the whole board. And I think that's what we want, is that any member on an issue that is important to the whole board can speak with the attorney. That's where I think that, we don't want to go down the road and allow significant legal bills on personal issues. That's just not, that's not why we're here, and that's why most boards have a designee, because they want to try to accommodate that it is the group's issues that are being discussed.
And I think one word that you said, just not to interrupt you, Donna, but just one word in there that you said was educational issue. And that's maybe a good term to put in there, that it has to be education-related in the first place, something to either do with states or budgets or something that's going on, if they have a concern in that regard. Where I struggle with what you're saying is that if it's importance to the whole board, because we've never operated in that fashion. What Mike said earlier, we've always allowed one board member to put something on the agenda. So if a board member feels strongly about an issue that they want to get an answer to, I think they should be entitled to get that answer from the attorney.
But we don't operate in that way.
I-
If we have an issue that is ours alone, we don't task staff with research that is, days long. We
Most
are.
of the time. It happens though, Kristen.
It
I
does
mean,
happen.
but for the
happens.
most part,
But
we
that's where we
try-
self-police and say, I believe.
And that's correct. And then the board president could advise, hey, a board member has this issue. Maybe somebody wants to.
So I
put
hear
on
the spirit
agenda.
of what you're saying in the discussion. I've jotted a few things down. I'm not going to share them right now, but I think I get a sense that they can be respectful of, I think, what you're asking, yet not be, and I'll bring it back and we'll find out when we bring it back how you feel about it, so.
Okay, so we'll bring this back again for discussion without action.
Donna had something,
Don,
though.
But just
And then when Donna's done.
before we go for it, we're going to bring this back again for discussion without action ultimately.
Right.
Hopefully by the 15th, but no pressure on you.
Well, I would be looking at the September one.
That's fine.
We have a couple other policies that we're working on with council right now that, I'll talk about in a little bit. And I think this is going to take, this is going to be a unique custom policy, so, but I think we can have action by September, so.
Okay, Donna.
So I have concerns similar to Kristen's as far as us having some control so we don't increase, legal costs. But I completely agree with Jackie's comment about how one of the things that we have that's strong, one of the strongest policies that we have in place is where we all have equal access to put something on the agenda. I think the two differ a little bit because by putting something on an agenda, we're bringing it to open session where we can all speak together and come together as one voice. Whereas the policy that we're looking at in terms of the board attorney, I kind of like us to take the same kind of approach where, and I think that's kind of what Kristen was saying, something about how we have one voice that's going forward. And so I would almost want us to think about, it says the super, and I don't know, depending on what wording Dan comes back with, but we have the superintendent, his or her designee, and then to Mike's point, we have the board president, which gives, it takes away equal power from all of us by having the board president there, are authorized to confer. And it says, but the board may authorize a specific member to confer with legal counsel on its behalf. I would almost, and I did ask Terry, I go, so how often, have you talked to the attorney in the last 4 years? And he said, minimal, and I'm sure that you maybe would say, I don't know if you'd say the same or not from your experience as president.
Oh, I normally go through the superintendent on it,
Right.
on just
So,
about anything.
I would almost want us to consider at least, and this is a little bit of a radical change, but taking the board president out and saying the superintendent, his or her designee, and the board may authorize a specific member to confer with legal counsel on its behalf, which brings it down to being an equal, like any of us would have the access if we agree as one voice that we need those questions answered. And take so that it's minimizing any, we become all one equal by taking the board president out instead of putting all of us in. That would be my thought on reeling it.
My only concern with that would be, some things are time sensitive. You don't have time for a meeting to go 2 weeks. There's a reason you've chosen a board president, and that is the hub of the wheel. And I think if that person has a relationship with the board members and the superintendent, I'm very comfortable, the board president being, not giving permission, but being advised and informed. And the board president could say, hey, it's a great question, get back to us and let us know the answer. So I really believe this is no different than sitting in a staff member's office or sending emails about a lot of questions and clarifications. That is also staff, that is also time, whether we're literally writing a check or not. I think this can make us better. So anyhow.
We'll also seek council's opinion on this, too. This is going to be unique, maybe different for them, so.
Okay, Charles?
Yeah. So from my perspective, I'm also very supportive of having taken a look at this, because I think that the word didn't come up, but the word that popped into my mind is transparency. Mm-hmm. Just making sure that any board member has the opportunity to make the phone call. There's a courtesy to the board president to address any issues, or if something's redundant, to avoid those 8 calls going in. I think that's critical and important. I think Kristen brings up a good point, though, in terms of having some kind of check and balance. I don't have any proposed wording for this, so Dan, you have your work cut out for you, but that addresses that it should be something that, maybe it's a limitation of time, maybe it's a limitation of, attorneys always work in billable hours. Maybe it's, hey, if it's a 15-minute phone call, it's fine. If it goes beyond that, then something that puts some kind of limitation that just allows us to make sure that we're being good financial stewards of those resources that are devoted to that, because again, from working with attorneys in the past, everything that comes up it's billable. The clock starts ticking the minute you pick up the phone. So to be able to put some kind of a financial limitation on that while allowing the flexibility of, if someone has a concern, to be able to have the transparency to be able to go and ask that question and get that concern addressed.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, so Dan's going to go for a draft and bring something back on September 6th under discussion without action for a second time.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay, at least that's a goal. If it's going to change, you'll let us know.
Yep.
Okay. Next 2 policies, Jackie?
And again, I don't see any particular hurry. I think that the benefit of all this is getting it right, and getting it right
Okay.
for future boards as well. The next 2 are sort of related. And I did a little bit, I'm on it, actually it started with another organization I'm in, where the thought is that you have a 2-year term, but yet the election's every year, which brings a whole lot of flexibility, at least to me. I said, I'll buy in for a year, but I don't know if I want to buy into 2. So a thought was that I've talked to Terry about, and Mike about, would it make sense to have the practice can be 2 years, or whatever we want it to be, but to look at it each year, to bring flexibility to flexibility, course correction, busy lives, your schedule changed, your life changed, you now have a travel job, you didn't have one. And I actually, in talking to Mike, Mike was in that situation where you were local, and then you were working out of another city, so very different. So I wanted everyone's thoughts on that. Yeah.
So just for clarification, so school code has a 2-year term unless amended by policy for 1 year. So it's got to conform to those parameters as well. So but what you're suggesting is that the term be for 2 years? 1 year term. So we'd be amending, we want to amend the policy the way it's written, follow school code? All right.
And then if you want to re-up for a year, you want to re-up, or the board wants you to re-up, no problem.
Okay.
So,
Kristen?
again, I look at all these policies and I look at not just what we are going to do, but looking forward for the future because of the fact that this, what we try to do is do policies that we don't have to look at every year. We keep them for a while. And I did also look at the underlying statute, which you're correct, it actually asks that we pass a resolution if we want to have a 1-year term. So my thought was, what about giving each board, so currently our policy is kind of a hybrid. It allows for the 2-year term, but it allows at the request of the president, so if the president takes a job that's far away, or at the request of the majority of the members of the board, to change it to a 1 year. The difficulty with that is that it could imply somewhat of a referendum on the performance of a particular person, or we just had a controversial issue and that person voted no, and that would be my fear. But my concern is that by changing it to a 1-year term unilaterally, that we are potentially choosing something for future boards as well that may not fit those boards. By and large, I believe most boards do pick a 2-year term. I think probably because of the predilection in the statute to push you towards a 2-year term and because it kind of coincides with those organizational meetings, correct. But what if we allowed for the option of each board, as they go through the election process, to pass a resolution making it a 1-year term? So our policy would allow for a 1-year or a 2-year term at the time that we elect the person. So it's not a 1-year referendum, it's not a 2-year referendum with a halfway point. It is when we are electing the people, we say, we have the option to do a 1 or a 2. It's in our policy that we can choose either way. And then this board, if the majority of this board prefers to have 1 year, we can do that. But if we go 2 years and that board wants to go back to 2, either one is allowable under our policy based on the choice of the majority of the board members at the current time.
So just before, so I got clear. So the policy would stay written a 2-year term, or it's just you're going to follow school. So we immediately after the board elects the president and the vice president, then there would be a resolution for 1 year or 2-year term?
Well, it could be after the board elects the person. It could be after, it could be before. I guess what I would recommend is that right now it reads, the election shall occur at the board at the president's request, or, so I would say something like, let's see, I wrote something down. At the request of a majority of the board, or at the request of the president or majority of the board, at the time of the vote, a resolution may be adopted converting the term to a 1-year term. But you could combine it with what we have as well and just say either at the time of the election or during a 2-year term, the board may, at the president's request or at the request of the majority of board, to allow for, if you have a 2-year term, it still allows for a 1, but it would also allow a board to choose between a 1 or a 2 based on circumstances so that it doesn't proscribe that we must do a 1. You know what I'm saying? Because a future board may not want a 1-year term. We may not, as a majority, want a 1-year board, but our policy doesn't allow for it. Not at the time of an election. It only allows for a 2.
Go ahead, Mike.
I think that's tremendously messy, because basically you're asking the board to go, okay, we're electing a new president, and then we're not going to do you for 2 years, or we're going to do you for 2 years. We're going to cut you off in 1 year. I think the cleanest thing is just to have a 1-year term. Our lives change so much. Newly elected, first thing you do is you get elected, and then at an organizational meeting, it's like, hey, pick the president, pick the vice president. I don't know them. This way you have that chance in a year to to learn the people and maybe make a course change or maybe not. 1 year, I mean, 1 year is a long time. It's allowed, it's clean. And to your point, if a board 10 years from now, and none of us are on it, decides they want to go to 2 years, they can certainly do that again. You can always go back. But I think doing anything that's half and half gets messy. I mean, I think we've seen it before. If you just make it a 1 year term, it's nice and clean. You come up, if everybody's happy with the way things are going, you, just like we do now every 2 years, you just nominate the people again and you have a vote and you move on. If things change, for whatever reason, it takes all the politics and emotion out of it to just have the 1 year term and gives us flexibility. And I believe, doesn't our park district do this? They do this currently.
Very in favor of it.
So I totally support it. I think it's a good idea. It gives us more flexibility, but it doesn't restrict us from, you can still have, like we see when we go to, the conferences. Oh, I've been a board president for 16 years. You can still do that, so that's just my feelings on it.
I feel like we have a new school year every year. It's a nice opportunity. I mean, it kind of fits with everything else that we do on an annual basis. Dan, I have a question for you. I would hate to make things more difficult for you. And is that transition of a president every year something that would be okay with?
Yeah, I've given a little bit of thought to that topic. As we've talked about organization, we've talked, in reorganization at times, we've talked about different ways maybe to do planning and prep. I don't think a year would be too quick of a transition turnover, so I think that would be okay. I wouldn't want to see more frequent for sure.
We're not allowed to.
Yeah, I know, but in terms of
It's
when
1
I think
year.
about meeting preparation, for example, there was some conversation about alternate ways to prep the agenda for the meeting. It's important to have a consistency of voice. And again, maybe that'd be different with a future board. I feel I have a positive professional relationship with 6 of you in developing the 7th with our newest board member. Can't say
No
we're,
offense.
I knew we're there, but I didn't want to speak for you. So again, maybe to that topic of a future board. Listening to some of Kristen's points, I kind of agree with Mike in terms of without very clear criteria or rationale for a decision on a 1 year or a 2 year. I think our council would tell us you're subjecting yourself to some open risk. Why did you do 1 year for this one, but 2 years for that one? And if there's really nothing specific and clear on that, I think that's going to be difficult to word. But if that's where we end up. Question that I'm going to have too is, that I'll have to talk to council about is, and I know this is not the intent of this, but is it going to require a reorganization when the policy goes into effect? Or can it be worded in a way that it takes effect at the next reorganization? So there are some things that we're going to have to look at here. So I'll go with the direction of the board.
Okay,
So if
I
you-
just appreciate that because, I think people's lives change so much. You don't always know. And you're like, maybe I would take it on for a 3rd year, but not 4th year. Or,
You're a good example. If you were president about, a year or 2 ago?
and now I'm gone all the
Right.
time. Right. So.
So, from my perspective, and Dan, I appreciate the thought, because what I heard you say was that you would be okay with it potentially being a year. I didn't hear you necessarily say that would be your preference, because I'm sure there are some advantages to having some level of continuity, and that's what I like about the 2 year terms with having continuity. As someone whose life changed, about 4 years ago, in terms of a more global role. I was traveling a lot, et cetera, and it really changed a lot of dynamics, so I can appreciate that change. I wonder if there's an opportunity to put in similar to any role that you're in, you get a kind of a review or a conversation that says, hey, how are things going? Is there an opportunity to put something, a formalized mechanism in place where feedback can be generated at certain times? It just says, here's how we think things are going, here's what we'd like to see things done, how we'd like to see things different, or here's what's great, to just provide that level of feedback, at which point then, there's any number of different things that could happen after that, from continuing or not continuing or what have you. but that the understanding up front would be that it would be 2 years. I don't know how to word all of that and how that
Right.
would work, but it's just a thought.
Go ahead, Jackie.
I think we do have that, a board self-evaluation, and we've done those, and I think they've been, it's basically, it's not a judge and jury on the president or vice president, but it's on the entire board, which I think is very beneficial, and we've done those a number of times, probably every other year. I have a lot of organizations, as I say, the practice is 2 years. Mike was a president for 4 years. It just depends on what's going on in the world. And that's where to my point, when I think about it, I think it gives a lot of flexibility to the person in the role, because you don't have to say 6 months in, oh, I have to step down. Or rather, you just say, hey, guys, my world's changed. Or gals, my world's changed. So I see it with the utmost of flexibility, not changing the practice. I think 2 years is a nice, sweet amount of time, but it gives everybody flexibility on both sides. No one's stepping down because of a change in schedule, or feels they need to because of a change in schedule, but yet they can re-up because it's best for everyone on the board. I just think it's best practice. If it is right for everyone, sorry, Michael.
You know, really what it comes down to is, it's obviously in between the elections. If we go through it takes 5 minutes or less. The thing is, it's the same 7 people 99% of the time. If everybody's happy with the president and vice president, if their roles haven't changed, if their jobs haven't changed, then it's the same 7 people. So, I mean, it's not like people are going to go, well, I just changed my mind. You know, I mean, if there is a change, there's going to be a reason for it. This just tremendously simplifies the mechanism to allow that change to happen on an annual basis instead of every 2 years. And that's really what I'm looking at. If everything is going hunky-dory, there's not going to be a change, because it's the same board members. It's not like we just had 3 new people elected, and you know, which brings up the whole other thing I was bringing up before. You can have 4 people elected, and you know, all of a sudden nobody knows, you know, the president and the vice president. So I don't want to say stuck with them, but now you're committed to them for 2 years versus I think 1 year is a more flexible option. But
Donna?
So again, before we see the wording, my input would be that I would echo some of what I heard Charles say about continuity and learning curve, and I mean, those are my initial feelings, but I don't have a strong feeling until we look at what the wording is. I guess my biggest concern would be, I look at the 2 roles as more administrative roles than anything else, and whatever we can do to de-escalate them being more of a power role, because we're all one equal voice, and make them more of an administrative role, I would be in favor of. And I'm not sure, just in my own mind, if 1 year helps that or hinders that, you know, just the de-escalating of those roles being, or the idea that they're more administrative than power roles. That would be my input.
Kristen?
So I also have a little bit of a concern with regard to the rationale for the 2-year term. I mean, it is in the statute for 2, I think with a reason, because it is, there is that part of learning about what you're doing and being able to implement it. I think what I would be concerned of in the situation that you guys are describing, where it's the expectation is that it's 2, but that there's a vote at 1, it's either 1 or 2. It's not.
yeah, I don't support the other one either. It's got to be clear 1 or 2.
But what you're describing is, if there isn't a concern, then we would just re-vote it, and it would be a.
Well, that's what we do every 2 years now.
I know, but every 2 years, it has often, gone to a new person or a new configuration, that kind of thing. If it would become a 1-year term, I would expect it to have that same thing. And I do wonder a little bit about the churn of that, in terms of every 10 months, basically, there's, you're done, and then you're on your way out, and you've got the next people coming in and learning a little bit from that.
It's interesting, because I spoke with many of the Park District commissioners, because the word I think I heard from Terry early on was a revolving door. And I said, oh, interesting. They said it's just the opposite. It's a great learning experience. And I think Mike Riley's done it 4 times, not consecutively now. They said it's a tremendous learning experience. More people have gone and taken on the role because it's just a year. So anyhow, just, it's food for thought.
And there is, I can see the point with that, and I get that. I look at most boards, and they do have 2-year terms, and I don't, as well, correct. I'm talking about school boards, because that's what we are. And so
I
I'm looking
understand.
at, I called the ISB to check on, how many boards do this. It's hard for them to determine, they don't know.
Right.
But there is that question of, most boards do have a term. Why? Why does the statute reference 2 years? And our board, our policy does allow currently, if you are the president and you take on another commitment, you can step down. It allows for that you say, hey, it's too much. I need another opportunity to get out of it. So it does allow for the president to do it, as well as the majority of the boards. Again, that can have the implication of a referendum, which I don't
Right.
love, which I
Right.
don't love. But I think we have to weigh, again, this idea that it is something of a learning curve,
Yeah.
and that we would be going through this multiple
Well,
times and multiple
just-
times.
Just to be clear, if the president were to step down for personal reasons or health reasons or anything, the way our policy is written, the vice president takes over. There's not a special election.
Right.
But
unless
that
we-
would be this, because in statute it says that as well.
Yeah, no,
In statute, it becomes, in
Obviously-
statute, it says
Yes.
that the vice president
No,
will
that's what
become the
I'm saying.
president.
It's like 6 months into the term, someone can't go, hold a new election. I got a job transfer or something like that. The vice president would take over. But anyway, just to clarify that.
Wouldn't that be the same if it was a year, though, as well?
But
No,
what our
the-
policy
It's an
says
election.
is that we can have a special election at the
Right.
request of the president. It wouldn't, that would be a special election. So our policy does not say, you are correct. If there is someone who steps down in midterm, the statute specifies that the vice president goes in. But what our policy says is that we can have a special election at the request of the board president.
After 1 year.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So in that case, if a person decides, oh, I want to do this, oh, I didn't want to, we'd have a special election.
I think in the end, what it's really going to come down to is I would suggest we have what we have now, and then we have an option for 1 year. We look at them both, and then, majority rules. I mean, it's not a difficult choice. I mean, I understand both sides, but I mean, it's pretty black and white. You either like the 2 year, or you like the 1 year, and there's reasons pro and con for each one. So,
The reason I think this is so healthy that we've talked about it, until I'm looking at Charles and I'm hearing Mike say, somebody comes on board and has to agree to someone. And you two, I remember your comments, you were put in these roles as any new board members, and then we didn't keep Donna said to me, well, I thought you would stay on as president, which was fine. She thought that was the natural, that was the light bulb that just went on in my head through this discussion tonight. So the election is in May, our organizational meeting, I'm sorry, the elections are in April. 3 weeks later, the night, the evening that the people take oath, they also vote on new leadership. That's a huge deal. They don't even know the people. They certainly don't know they're working. So
But that would be
was,
the same under this.
I would say that it's 1 year though. And I think I never even thought about that till we had this discussion tonight. And I'll leave you with what I just want to always make sure we consciously are doing things and it's not inertia. And that's why I wanted these conversations of these policies. But I'll leave you with something that no other district does in the state. Any board member can put anything on an agenda. And we don't take that lightly. We know it takes staff time. We know it takes board time, preparation time. And it's been like that with other boards as well in District 203. So
Charles?
Just so, before we move on, I mean, we have, to my knowledge, I'm just trying to think. Susan, I don't know, have you ever been board president?
No,
I'm vice president. Vice president, okay. So I know, Terry, you're currently, Mike, you've been, and I know, Jackie, you've been board president. So what was the learning curve getting up to speed? Just because, again, that's one of my concerns, is that if it's too short a turnaround, I mean, I've been in jobs where it took me 6 months to figure out exactly what I was doing. I'm not talking about this one, but I'm talking about other jobs I've had. But just would like to get some perspective from 3 people who've had the role.
I think it depends on the person and what they do in the role. I was vice president for 4 years. So when I went to presidency, it wasn't, I don't know that it was, I didn't sit with Mike in a room anymore, I sat with Terry. I did, and we'd all been board members for about the same amount of time. So I think that's as unique as the person is to the role, I think.
I can actually speak to that,
Oh,
having worked with 3 presidents. I think the real only learning curve is agreeing to and understanding how you're going to best communicate with each other, because I've communicated very differently with each of those 3 presidents. And once you have that figured out, what's the best way to communicate with me, best way to contact me, when do you like to talk, how do you want to talk, it's,
and then what is unique is how that president talks to everyone else. You know, it's that whole.
Okay.
Okay, like I said, school code does allow for it. We can, but it's either or. It's either 2 years or 1 year, and that's what we're looking at. We're not looking at a modified system, just to give the board an option. I would agree. You give people options. Options are bad. At least from my line of work, options are bad. You have to narrow the focus down to something. So the board could always go back if they don't like the 1 year term. They could always go back and modify it and make it back to 2 years permanently, if that's what they want to do. And they can look back on this discussion and so forth. We can keep record of it so they can kind of see what we're trying.
That is something we should probably discuss with our attorney. Just
Yep.
because the underlying law does call for a resolution, I think it might need a resolution at each election in order to keep it a 1 year term. It's something that we should check with
We
our
can,
attorney.
we can
answer.
ask that
Yep.
question.
Yep. And then I don't want to leap on 2104, but that seems like a sister policy to 110. And so the review of 104 then would simply be a draft that mirrors.
Or I would say vice versa. I would look at it.
Sure, either way, yeah.
If you look at 2110, the only thing I was bringing up was.
The 2 to the
It
1,
says 2,
yeah.
make it 1, not any of the other details.
All right.
Yes.
Well, I had a question on 110 now.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, since we're looking at 2.110, our policy does not include the vice president. Our practice is that the vice president and the president both sit and set the agenda. And I think that is in the role for the president, but not necessarily for the vice president. And
It's a good
so
catch,
I just,
So you want to add the vice president to
Yeah,
setting
board
of the
prep
agenda?
to vice president, kind of.
I
Agenda
just think that we
prep.
should,
That's a great-
that should be a discussion that we
No, wait, wait.
consider.
Well, you mentioned that on the phone, and from my perspective, since the vice president has to fill in for the president in case the president's absent, that makes logical sense for the vice president to be in the agenda setting
Totally.
in case, there's an illness or car accident, whatever happens, and the president can't come to the meeting.
But that hasn't always been the practice.
Right.
Right.
And I think, again, looking to future boards, we know that's the practice now, is somebody maybe wants to step forward as a candidate for the vice presidency, they'll need to know that there's a biweekly commitment.
Right.
Yeah.
There's additional meeting you need to go to, so, but yeah, but
a
it
good
should be
point.
amended to add that person there, or are you thinking something different, Donna?
Well, I just thought it was worth discussing because it's a practice that we have, it's not in policy.
Absolutely.
There are other things that we have that are practices that are not in policy. I just thought it was a worth discussion between the group.
I think it's good to have it in there, so that way everybody knows what's going on. I just didn't know if you wanted to suggest anything different, but, okay. Susan?
Jackie, I just want to say thanks for bringing these forward. I mean, we don't just talk about policies, we talk about programs in our district, all the things that need to be looked at all the time. And I just appreciate the best practice that you're looking to provide us with. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Right, you want to talk to the attorney and so forth about these, and, this one a little more complex, you want to shoot for a little bit longer, or what do you want to?
Yeah, I think, and I'm going to mention 2 other policies here in just a second. I think both of these can probably be discussed at the 2 September meetings. And if the council feels that they need to take a little bit more time, then I'll let you know at the August 15th meeting.
Okay. You said, you had any more questions or comments from the board on these items? Okay, are we on to
9.01.
9.01? Okay, we're on to 9.01. We have 2 policies? 2 policies.
2 policies, yes. I'm going to pinch hit for Mr. Ross this evening. And so just a couple updates on some. 7170, the vandalism policy we brought for our first read last month. Suggestion was made on looking to have language to reflect the authorization for administration of the district to seek restitution for other related costs in the situation of vandalism. And we're working with council on developing that language right now and hope to have that to you at the latest by the September meeting, hopefully maybe the August 15th meeting. Also, a suggestion was made regarding a new policy, the in lieu of policy to somewhat mirror an expulsion policy, and that's in the process of being reviewed by council as well. And once we have agreement on a draft there that we think fits the request of the board, we'll bring that forward again, targeting August 15th, if not September meetings. Okay? But then there were two others that we brought last time. The first one is 7160, student appearance. There's just some minor revisions there. We had a little of the conversation last time, and based on that conversation and feedback and better understanding, you see that there was another change. Replaced the word grooming with the phrase of personal hygiene. There were also questions asked last time about maybe some examples of what might be inappropriate. So looking at, like, for example, our high school handbooks, clothing that promotes use of alcohol or drugs, or that contain sexually explicit language. Other examples would be, accessories or attire that conceals identity, hats. There are religious exemptions, of course, but I think that was the question we had on that one. I'd be happy to answer any others.
Questions or comments from the board on either policy? Susan?
I have a question. It just occurred to me now. It says, in the parent/student handbook, are the handbooks available online for the parents?
Yes.
Okay. Because sometimes you just don't know the answer to something. Thank you.
Donna?
Yeah.
So we changed the word grooming in the first line, but then down in the fourth line, we still use the word who dress or groom inappropriately.
Yeah.
I don't need
I
to
thought it was
change
okay
just
there.
wanted
It
to
was just
point it
like,
out.
I couldn't find the same word, so it's if the board's okay with it, I think we'll leave that there. Okay?
Any
And then-
question?
Nope.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm sorry. And then the second was 7.275. There were no recommendations for changes. There's just some cross-reference updating.
Any other questions or comments from the board, either policy? All right, motion, please.
So I move to approve item number 9.01, policy 7.160, and policy 7.275 as presented.
I second.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 9.01, policy revisions, as presented. Roll call, please, Ms. Bell.
Fitzgerald,
Aye.
Fielden,
Yes.
Crotty,
Yes.
Kush.
Aye.
Romberg.
Yes.
Yench,
Aye.
Wanke.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Have to let Mr. Ross know how easy it is to do this policy. I don't know what the...
When he's not in the room, it's much
Yeah.
easier, yeah.
How quick that was.
Look that up next time I see him. Item 10, new business. Any new business for the board? Old business? Upcoming events?
It's the first day of
Yes,
school,
first day of
sure.
school's
Thanks,
there.
Ann.
Well, but we have a new educator breakfast before that on August 12th. It's always a good event. And then classes begin on August 17th. A glorious day for everybody.
I'll have some more comments on the August 15th meeting, but again, just for our community who's watching, this is a target audience of our new families to District 203, but a welcome for all of our families in District 203 to come together on Sunday, August 28th for our second annual Welcome Back and Back to School picnic. Great opportunity, especially for our new families, to make connections with our district.
With our district, there's a lot of other services that come there, like community police department and so forth there. It's a really good time to meet some other people you wouldn't ordinarily get a chance to meet. Okay, Mike?
One quick thing, only one new board member, but just a reminder for everybody, if you want to go on tours first day of school, please work with Dan, because he's going to be
We'll
assigning...
review this with Cabinet tomorrow on availability, and then I will send something out to the board asking that if you're interested in visiting your adopted schools. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, last item, motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Terry, I like those 8:15 meetings.